Hello everyone, today is 16th of January, now it's about 9 o'clock in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for a day in which I'll share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Later on today, if there will be some technical issues or something, I will publish second news update on my Patreon and the Boosty pages. And I will share additional main news that Russian media will report during the day. And if you are looking for more news from Russia, more commentary, or if you like my work and want to support, you're more than welcome to join our communities on Patreon or Boosty. If for whatever reason you don't like Patreon platform, links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. I really hope our communities on Patreon and Boosty will grow because it is immensely important for survival or survivability of this project. And dear friends, if you will subscribe to my Patreon or Boosty, it might become also helpful in the future, because right now I'm considering to move first update on Patreon and Boosty also, and if that will happen, then on my YouTube and Rumble channels, I will publish only some short clips from these main updates. But I did not yet make their final decision. So, anyways, please consider to subscribe to my Patreon and their Boosty pages. I cannot exaggerate how important that is for survivability of this project. That's been said, let's go through some news now. And first of all, short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. Russian armed forces established control over the Ukrainka settlement, which is located in between Kurachovo and Pokrovsk cities. Russian armed forces achieving, improving their positions all along the front line, obviously, and every single day we are receiving reports about yet another 1, 2, 3 or more settlements being liberated, and there today is no exception. Russian troops established control not just over the Ukrainka settlement, but Vladimir Rogov, expert from Zaporozhye sector of the front line, shared with public information that Russian armed forces actually established full control over the Toretsk city. Battles for Toretsk was taking place for quite a while now, and well, according to Rogov, Russian troops established full control over the town, and some clearing operation is underway. If that is the case, obviously in next couple of days, maybe even today, Russian Defense Ministry probably will make announcement about liberation of Toretsk, which is a big deal, obviously. And this is not all. Russian armed forces during the counter-terrorist operation in the Kursk salient area established control over the Makhnovka settlement, according to Ukrainian politician, blogger, journalist in exile. He lives in Spain, Anatoly Shary. He was first who shared this information. And let's wait and see if Russian Defense Ministry will give us a confirmation of this news during the day. But if information is correct, then one may argue that Russian armed forces have begun final push towards Suja. Makhnovka is located on, as you can see, dear friends, this is Suja, biggest settlement that Kiev regimes and NATO mercenaries invading forces managed to occupy in the Kursk salient area. And Makhnovka is located on southern eastern side, on outskirts basically of Suja. And if this settlement is under Russian control, then, well, as I said, one may argue that operation to liberate Suja itself has begun. Kursk salient area itself, part of the borderline area of the Kursk region, is shrinking. Area that is temporarily occupied by invading forces shrinking on daily basis. And I said quite a few times before that on the current rate of losses of manpower and military equipment, it is hardly likely that Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries will be able to maintain their presence in the Kursk salient area more than 4 or 5 weeks. It all depends on general plans that Russian Defense Ministry and security forces have, obviously. And dear friends, I also want to point out your attention to one topic. In the Western propaganda, as many of you are already seeing and notice, it is presented that Kiev regime's operation invasion into Kursk salient area is something of unimaginable scale and success, and they are trying to present this topic as if Kiev regime achieved some unbelievable success, while it's not really the case and never was the case, right? And dear friends, let me show you area that we are talking about. This is Kursk salient area, right? On the borderline, on the border with formerly Ukraine. And these white lines that I'm pointing with the mouse is a Kursk region, right? And even in terms of Kursk region, this Kursk salient area is about, I don't know, 3% of the territory, 4%, 5% max, right? That's what it is. This invasion into Kursk region always was a total disaster on part of Kiev regime and their NATO backers, and it is still disaster, right? Russian armed forces neutralized 52,000 military personnel of Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries in this salient area, and what they achieved, they managed to temporarily occupy some borderline area of the Kursk region that if you did not zoom in big time, I mean, you're not gonna even notice it, right, on the map. We have to zoom in significantly to see this place. That's what is happening, by the way. That's how propaganda works. If you're not familiar with the maps, if you have no idea where this Kursk region is, where this Kursk salient is, and you just listen to Western propaganda, then you might get impression that, well, the entire region is under control of Kiev regime, or half of Russia even maybe. But in reality, that's what it is, man. Suja district, right? Suja settlement and a couple of villages around it. That's about it. Initially, yes, this salient was a little bigger, but obviously Russian forces during the counter-terrorist operation force invading troops back. 52,000 of them were killed and wounded. Thousands of pieces of military equipment was destroyed during this operation, military equipment of mainly Western produced, right? And we are now observing final stages of this counter-terrorist operation, during the which whatever is remnants of these invading brigades of the Kiev regime will be decimated, and that's about it. So don't believe in Western stupid propaganda that Kiev regime achieved some success anywhere in the Kursk direction or any other direction. They never achieved nothing and will never achieve nothing. That's how it is. Now let's go through some other news. And for example, this report from TASS News Agency that yesterday first POW exchange took place, first for 2025, and 25 Russian POWs were released, prisoners of the war were released by Kiev regime, and Russian side released also 25 Ukrainian POWs. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that during the nighttime, early hours of this morning, Russian air defense systems intercepted 27 Ukrainian drones that were launched to strike deep into Russian territory, with assistance of a number of NATO member states, obviously. And even though majority of these drones were destroyed, unfortunately, not all of them, seems like, because we have this report from Vzгляд newspaper that as a result of drone strike in Voronezh region, one oil depot was damaged and caught fire, and this information was confirmed by governor of the region, Alexander Gusev. And emergency services are now working to deal with the consequences of this attack. No reports about casualties at this point, and what level of damage was done to fuel depot or oil depot itself. Meanwhile, we also have this report that, well, the Russian Defense Ministry basically clarified what was the purpose of yesterday's missile strike on Kiev-controlled territory that Russian armed forces conducted. And, well, according to this report, you know what, let's translate, by the way. Yesterday's strike was a retaliation. So a group of the group strike on the gas infrastructure of Ukraine was a response to the attack of Ukrainian armed forces with ATACMS and the Storm Shadow missiles, and for the attack on a compressor station in Kubань, compressor station of the Turk Stream pipeline. The Russian Defense Ministry reported, and then quote, on the morning of January 15 of this year, the armed forces of Russian Federation launched a group strike with their precision weapons on critical objects of the gas and energy infrastructure of Ukraine, the ministry said. So yes, in yesterday's second update on my Patreon and Boosty, I spoke about this topic, that one of the main targets of this strike was to neutralize some of the infrastructure of the Kiev regime's energy infrastructure, gas pipelines, underground storage, gas storage facilities. And according to some reports from other sources, in Lvov region, biggest underground gas storage facility was hit. No information, no precise information about level of damage that was done as a result of this strike. But as I said in my yesterday's update on Patreon, I think this was a warning shot from Russia. This was not a necessarily major strike to neutralize energy infrastructure of the Kiev regime or the gas infrastructure of the Kiev regime. This was a warning shot. First of all, for Western ruling class and their so-called Western elites, especially in Europe, that if they will continue to support Kiev regime in its long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, then Russia will take out energy infrastructure of the Kiev regime completely, gas infrastructure of the Kiev regime completely. And this is a big deal because it's not just the Kiev regime itself that stores some gas in underground storage facilities, but I believe quite a number of European states also are receiving gas from Ukrainian underground storage facilities, Germany included, right? They are, Western companies are renting, basically, as far as I understand, these underground storage facilities. And well, if West will not listen to this warning shot, I guess in upcoming weeks, large-scale operation will take place to neutralize whatever gas infrastructure Kiev regime has. First of all, underground storage facilities. I guess so. So, time will tell. Vzгляд newspaper, meanwhile, is reporting that according to article in the Forbes, Kiev regime will no longer create new brigades for the armed forces, and this will be done to avoid another scandals like one happened with 155 highly advertised brigade that was partially trained in France, partially in Ukraine. There was a big media campaign that this 155th brigade gonna be, elite force in Kiev regime's arsenal. And what happened in reality is that, almost half, by the way, almost half of this brigade run away even before brigade was deployed to the line of contact, right? So 1,700 military personnel, by the way, left this brigade. right? And I don't know if formally 155th Brigade still exists, but this, that again, highly advertised formation definitely was a huge disaster from media optics, right? From optics of public opinion, it was a huge disaster, and I guess from now on, Kiev regime will just try to reinforce with their forcefully mobilized people in Kiev controlled territory to reinforce whatever brigades they still have left, right? So no more new brigades from Zelensky. Okay, I mean, if anybody cares, by the way, let's be real here. If anybody cares, man, I guess this world is sick and tired of hearing about Ukraine day in, day out. And I mean, myself included, by the way. I don't want to report about Ukraine anything ever. And hopefully this conflict will end. And really, I will try to never even touch subject of Ukraine in my reports, because I'm sick and tired of talking of this historical error, so-called Ukraine, right? Meanwhile, RT is reporting that Trump's State Department peaker delivers a Ukraine reality checker to senators in US. It is unrealistic to believe Ukraine can win against Russia, and the US should no longer give Kiev indefinite support. Marco Rubio, nominated to be a Secretary of State in the upcoming administration of the President-elect Donald Trump, has stated, testifying before Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday as a part of his confirmation process. Rubio said that ending the conflict should be Washington's priority. And then, quote, I think it should be the official position of the United States that this war should be brought to an end. The Florida senator told his colleagues, there is no way Russia takes all Ukraine. I mean, he is very wrong on that. If Russia wants to, Russia can take her entire territory of this so-called Ukraine, but Russia will not, because I don't believe that many people here in Russia really cares about western parts of Ukraine. We just don't give a damn about western Ukraine, right? Honestly, majority of us. So you can have it, and that's how it's gonna be. As I said many times before, once this conflict will end, Ukraine will undergo full-scale disintegration process, and Western Ukraine will end up under control of NATO, and eventually will be reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania, and the rest of the Ukraine will become in Russian sphere of influence. Some parts will join Russia, other parts may maintain, let's say, Kiev and surrounding few regions may maintain quasi-statehood, but in Russian sphere of influence, right? That's how it's gonna be. So Rubio is wrong on that Russia cannot take her. Russia don't want, man. Just keep it at Western Ukraine. Keep it. And deal with all those Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists and the terrorists that you breed there, right? For decades and decades and decades. Some people, especially in the West, have no idea that Western secret services were working with the Ukrainian Nazis since their Second World War. They took quite a number of those Nazis in the West. You think from where this Ukrainian so-called Ukrainian communities came in Canada or in other Western countries? Aliens brought them there? No. Current members of those communities are descendants of Ukrainian Nazis, by the way, right? That Western secret services relocate in the West, and then were using them during the Cold War and more actively after Soviet Union collapsed to breed this Nazi fascist ideology, and adepts of that ideology in Ukraine, especially in Western Ukraine, right? And that's why currently Lvov and some other cities in Western Ukraine are breeding ground and their main ideological stronghold of Ukrainian Nazism and the fascism. So you know what? Keep that Western Ukraine to yourself. Rest of their territory of this so-called country is historical Russian territory, and obviously have to be one way or another, but in Russian sphere of influence. That's how it is, and that's how it's going to be. So anyways, let's continue. Meanwhile, Rubio also said that there is no way Ukraine is also going to push these people, he means Russians, all the way back to where they were before conflict. I guess noting the difference in size and population of their two countries. Ukraine's problem is not running out of money, but running out of Ukrainians, Rubio noted, quoting what he heard recently. And by the way, just as a reminder, US Congress has appropriated almost 175 billion in aid to Ukraine since the conflict escalated in February 2025. And you tell me how much good could be done with this 175 billion for US citizens if this money were really spent on welfare of the US citizens. But yet again, does US ruling class, US elites care about US citizens? I don't think so, man. There is places in US where there is not even tap water, by the way. And millions of people are receiving on a monthly basis food stamps, right? And this is happening in US, by the way. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Ask members of our community from US, they will tell you. So while this is happening, and while infrastructure is crumbling, and there is so much issues with the social fabric, with the economy, with this and that, 175 billion at least was stolen from US taxpayers to enrich military-industrial complex and corrupt officials in US and in so-called Ukraine. So anyways, Rubio had somewhat interesting meeting with his colleagues in the Senate. But yet again, dear friends, you know my take on Trump's administration, incoming administration. Call me skeptic, but I don't believe that these people will de-escalate anything in regards to relationships with Russia anytime soon. At least before current escalation will reach its peak, and this peak will be reached in next couple of months maximum. And after that, when Western ruling class, people that really are in charge of the Western world, including US, once they will realize that any further escalation will put their well-being on a line, well, at that point they will have no option but to face the reality, to come to their senses, and they will order their puppets in the US government, in governments of other Western countries, to start de-escalating, because those ruling elites of the West want to leave, you know, simple as that. And meanwhile, let me notice, dear friends, that this project is completely subscriber funded, and quite often I myself is surprised that we managed to survive for the last 2 years, by the way, without any sponsors, without any advertising and stuff. But we did thanks to you, dear friends. So yeah, this project is completely subscriber funded, and if you like my work, if you like my channels, if you think I deserve to be in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support or to continue supporting, by the way, so that I be able to bring you more news on daily basis. You can support with donations through PayPal or Boosty platforms, or by subscribing to my Patreon page or page on Boosty, and also with the crypto currencies if you are good with it. All the links, addresses are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And dear friends, while I'm advertising this project, let me also bring your attention to my Twitter X page. Recently, as members of our community who are already subscribed noticed, I become more active on Twitter. I mean, all these posts I shared yesterday, for example. If you are on Twitter, please consider to subscribe to my page. It's free, isn't it? And according to Twitter rules or X rules, once I will have 2,000 subscribers, my page will be eligible for monetization. I don't know how it works, dear friends. I have to learn this platform because, as I said, I might have account for several years now, but I was never really active here. So I'm learning in the process now. And, you know, if you can, please subscribe to my Twitter X page. Once we will reach 2,000, I will try to find out what that monetization is on Twitter, and if it can be helpful for this project, that system. Right, so right now our community on Twitter X is 861. Hopefully in months or two we will manage to reach 2,000, although I'm not sure about it. Anyways, dear friends, a link to my Twitter X account is also under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. Let's continue with some more news now, and obviously I have, Russian media paid attention to this developing story in regards to Israeli-Hamas negotiations that took place in Qatar, Doha. And well, according to reports, Hamas and Israel agree truce and POW exchange deal or hostage exchange deal. So Israel and Hamas have reportedly reached a ceasefire agreement to end their 15-month conflict in Gaza. The deal, mediated by the US, Qatar, and Egypt, includes a 42-day truce and the exchange of prisoners. Just before I started recording this update, I shared on my Telegram this news that current US President Joe Biden claims this achievement, let's say, although I'm not quite sure Biden's administration has any right to claim anything. I mean, they had all this time to be more effective when it comes to peace in Middle East, in Gaza Strip, for example, but they did nothing, right? Literally nothing. But anyways, let's go through this news. There will be 3 phases according to agreement. The first phase is that Israel will negotiate a long-term cessation of hostilities over the next 6 weeks. If no negotiations on final end to the fighting in Gaza drag on for more than 6 weeks, the ceasefire will still continue. The Palestinians can also return to their neighborhoods in all areas of Gaza, and the surge of humanitarian assistance into Gaza will begin, and innocent people can have greater access to the vital supplies. The second phase is that in exchange will be made for the release of the remaining living hostages, including male soldiers of Israel that are in captivity in Gaza, and all remaining Israeli forces will withdraw from Gaza with a temporary ceasefire becoming permanent. Third phase is that any remains of killed hostages will be returned to their families, and the large-scale post-war reconstruction will begin. So that's the main phases of this deal. And by the way, it's not just Biden that is claiming that he has anything to do with this ceasefire, but Trump, incoming US president, also, and he was one of the first who actually announced that agreement was reached. Israel and Hamas have struck a deal that secures the release of all hostages held by the Palestinian militant group. US President-elect Donald Trump has announced. He wrote on his page on his own social network, True Social name is, isn't it, of that platform. Maybe I should have an account there too. I don't know. I have to think about it. And he wrote, "We have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly." And so I think, by the way, in all fairness, I think Trump probably has more rights to claim that he played key role in achieving this agreement than Biden. But yet again, I mean, call me skeptic or I don't know, non-believer, but unfortunately, I'm not really optimistic when it comes to peace in Palestine, because I don't believe that Netanyahu and his criminal associates, genocidal associates, really planning to end hostilities. In my personal opinion, in a relatively short time, they will use any excuse. They might even conduct or authorize some false flag or something, but they will come up with some excuse to reignite fighting. And I believe their main goal is to force Palestinians on the first stage out of Gaza Strip completely and to reclaim that part of the land and integrated it to Israel. On the second phase, I believe a very similar plan Netanyahu and his associates have in regards to West Bank, to force all the local Palestinians out and to reclaim whatever land Palestinians hold there. I remind you, dear friends, that at least half of West Bank is occupied by Israel, and there is illegal settlements there, and it's also open air prison, by the way. If you think our West Bank is in any better situation than Gaza Strip, then it's not necessarily the case. Israel just not yet decimated the entire West Bank as it did with the Gaza Strip. But eventually, I believe Netanyahu and his genocidal associates want to force out Palestinians from West Bank also, and most likely, they have very similar plans for for southern Lebanon, right? They want to establish control over their southern Lebanon also and force locals out. And I'm afraid during the Trump's presidency, that's exactly what's going to happen. At least Israeli leadership will try to achieve that. So therefore, unfortunately, by the way, I'm not that optimistic that this peace deal, will stand and the Palestinians will really have opportunity to live in peace. Unfortunately, I don't think Netanyahu and his associates will allow that to happen. Time will tell if I'm right or wrong on that. Meanwhile, by the way, we have this interesting news that most Americans don't want Greenland, according to a recent poll, which is quite interesting. And first of all, because I don't think most Americans even know where Greenland is. I mean, I don't want to be, I don't want anybody in US to be offended with my remark, but I really don't think US educational system is that great. It's not. And therefore, I'm quite sure most Americans, literally most Americans, would not be able to point out Greenland on a map. I mean, our friends from US can conduct some, their own local study and ask first 10 people that they know. Can they point out Greenland? Straight away, without beginning, reading on the map and looking for names and stuff, straight away. Because if you know geography, if you know how the world looks, then you know straight away where Greenland is, right? You're not gonna start looking for Greenland somewhere in, I don't know, next to Australia, right? Because it's not there and never was there, right? So therefore, I'm not at all surprised that most Americans don't want Greenland, as if their opinion means anything for US political class. But anyways, US President-elect Donald Trump stated their intent to acquire Greenland from Denmark for national security purposes does not appear to have a support of American public, according to a new poll by USA Today. The Arctic island is an autonomous Danish territory. Trump had floated the idea of buying it during his first term in White House and reviewed the notion last month. Their initiative was met with widespread shock. USA Today claimed on Wednesday, citing a poll it commissioned from Suffolk University. According to the poll, which involved 1,000 respondents and was conducted from January 7th to January 11th, only 11% said that their upcoming Trump administration should do everything it can to acquire the island. Meanwhile, 29% thought that it was a good idea but unrealistic, while 53% did not support their acquisition of Greenland at all. While 86% of the Democrats polled were opposed to Trump's Greenland plan, only 23% of the Republican respondents were in favor. Another 21% said it was not a good, while 48% thought it was good but unrealistic. Anyways, as I said, dear friends, majority may be against this idea of Trump, but very same majority probably have no idea where that Greenland is and what that Greenland might mean for US to maintain its relevance on a geopolitical map, and because it is very relevant, very important for US to be part of northern maritime routes, right? And because that's the first reason, by the way, northern maritime routes. With global warming, which is obviously happening, although humans have nothing to do with it, but global warming itself is real, right? And the ice shield on the north is shrinking, and it's summer, no icebreakers even needed to navigate on a coastal line of Russia and other Arctic nations, right? Usually, it might not be necessarily the case always for now, but give it another 5, 10, 20 years. And maybe during the winter time also, we will have periods when no icebreakers will be needed for navigation. But obviously this northern sea route is a big deal, and the US, Western ruling class, wants their main enforcer, US, to be part of it. And that's why I think one way or another, but Greenland will become controlled by US, right? And secondary is, of course, rare earth materials that Greenland is rich with. Some people think it's all about rare earth materials that Greenland has. No, man. It's first of all, it's northern maritime routes, right? That will be most safe and shortest. That's the first, and secondary. There are secondary, and there are some other reasons that can be on third, fourth place, and those reasons are also important. But Main is a maritime route, and that's why I said I mean, it is inevitable that Greenland will definitely become under U.S. control, and when it comes to Canada, I guess Washington will force Ottawa to sign up some agreements with the U.S., which will allow Washington to operate on a coastal line of Canada any way they want, without any additional permissions to be asked from Ottawa, right? So therefore, there will be no need to integrate Canada itself as some sort of state or states into the US. Although who knows, man? If Canadians wants to become a part of US, it's their business. I have no strong opinion on that. Absolutely, I don't care. Really, if people of US and Canada want to get united in one country, then why should I be against it? I mean, you know, if people are happy, okay, great. So that's what it is. But this information is quite interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's continue. And the artist is also reporting that one of the main allies of Trump in Europe, by the way, will skip Trump's inauguration. Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban. And when I see this news, I was wondering, what the hell, man? What is happening here? It's definitely not looks okay that Orban will skip his visit to US, his inauguration of his ally Trump. Maybe during their last meeting something went wrong. I don't know, but it seems to me that some rift had happened between Orban and Trump or Trump's team. Otherwise, most likely he would participate in inauguration that is going to happen in like 4 days time, isn't it? So Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has confirmed he will not attend Donald Trump's inauguration. His government announced on Wednesday. A spokesperson stated that Orban's schedule is dominated by domestic commitments, making it impossible for him to participate in the ceremony in Washington on January 20th. So, well, I don't know what happened, by the way. I don't know what happened between Trump and Orban, but in my personal opinion, there should be some rift because I can understand that Orban is focused on domestic issues, first of all, understandably so, but I guess he could find time to visit Washington for a few hours, right? If he wanted to, but clearly something had happened there. Maybe he knows that Trump's administration, despite all the statements that they made during the election campaign, are not really about de-escalating anything, right? At least in immediate future. And therefore Orban is not happy about it because Hungary's position will know, isn't it? Hungary's leadership was from very beginning for de-escalation and peaceful resolution of the crisis. Maybe we will find out. Maybe we will find out what had happened between Orban and Trump in near future. Let's continue, and I have this report, dear friends, that Russia will build their experimental nuclear power plant in Vietnam, which will further enhance Vietnamese side in scientific research, in knowledge of operating nuclear reactors, nuclear technologies, and so on. And simultaneously, Russia is offering Vietnam to build a nuclear power station with two nuclear reactors. And this offer comes after Hanoi expressed its interest to build nuclear power stations. maybe in relatively short time, agreement will be reached between Hanoi and Moscow, and Russia's Rosatom will build their not just experimental nuclear reactor in Vietnam, but also nuclear power station. And of course, these projects will come with their obligation on part of Russian side that Rosatom will make sure that Vietnam has necessary that Vietnamese specialists will undergo training in Russia basically, and Vietnam will have specialists that will operate with this high-tech stuff that nuclear reactors are, right? And there are also a few more news. Russian car maker Lada, by the way, increased its sales in 2024 for 30%, which is quite significant, isn't it? For 30%, and maintain its leadership on the Russian market. And I want to highlight this news, by the way, mainly for one reason, which is that I feel good that Russian car maker managed to compete against Chinese companies, by the way, against Chinese car makers that are flooding Russian markets like there is no tomorrow. If you were in Russia, let's say 10 years ago, and if you came to Russia now, you would be surprised how many Chinese cars are on the streets. They are flooding the market, and at one point, not just me, I guess, but many other people here in Russia were thinking, you know what, Russian car makers gonna struggle, by the way, against these giants to compete. But well, it is great to know that Lada is not just able to compete, but also increasing its sales. In 2024, Lada sold 459,000 cars on a Russian market alone, which is good, by the way, which is good, obviously, but definitely constant work is needed among Russian car makers to make sure that they are not pushed out of market by Chinese car makers, by the way, that are providing very competitive, that are flooding market with a quite competitive, let's say, vehicles. And finally, dear friends, I will share and dear friends, of course, this news is also an indicator how Russian economy feels, right? Because these cars were brought by people here in Russia, isn't it? So if people are able to, buy hundreds of thousands of cars, and this is just when it comes to Lada. When it comes to other brands, then we are talking about millions of cars that were sold last year alone, right? New cars, and this information clearly indicates that, well, despite all these 40,000+ sanctions of the Western economy here in Russia is clearly withstanding this pressure, isn't it? And doing okay enough so that people are able to, buy new cars and live their lives, basically. Not all people. I cannot buy a car, by the way, unfortunately, but many people can, and I'm happy for them, and I'm happy that Russian economy is withstanding this pressure. And meanwhile, TASS news agencies report here that average wage in Russia has increased by 180%, basically, 1.8 times in last 5 years, which is during the time when current Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin is in office, and increase in average wage in 2 times. It's a good result, obviously, but if you take in account inflation for very same 5 years, this number may become a little less impressive, isn't it? And average wage at this point is 84,000 rubles, which is on the current exchange rate and the current exchange rate is about $850, because right now exchange rate is around 100, yes, 102 rubles for $1. That's exchange rate for today, for this moment. And obviously this is not an immense number, and more needs to be done to further increase real wages, of the people. And this is average wage, by the way. In Moscow, obviously wages are much higher, and in some other regions wages are lower, but that's the average number at this point, 84,000 rubles. And I will end this update now. Hopefully you will find it informative and interesting, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary if you can. This is the only way, dear friends, we can influence algorithm, at least try to influence algorithm. And I guess we somewhat managed to do this yesterday, thanks to you. Yesterday's video had last time I see more than 8,000 views, and on average my videos, due to this immensely aggressive algorithm, my videos on YouTube have about 4, 5, maybe 6,000 views, right? So anything above 6, 7,000 means that we managed to influence algorithm a little bit. So thank you all for your attention, for your comments and likes, and if you can, please help me with that once again. And if you like my work, as I said, dear friends, if you like my work, if you think I deserve to be in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support her. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.